All right. Well, welcome to the June 14th edition of the Medfield Board of Selectmen's meetings. My apologies. I'll have to start with this by apologizing for being late. I flew in from Chicago this afternoon because of yesterday's weather. I got in late. And so I did, in fact, manage to review all the materials prior to the meeting, however, but that accounts for my 5-minute being late by 5 minutes. A couple of points. The meeting will be held in hybrid format. The Board of Selectmen will attend in person, and members of the public may attend in person, and we actually have a pretty good turnout this afternoon, so this is great. In addition, members of the public who wish to participate via Zoom may do so by joining by one of the links that's provided at the town website. If you call up the Board of Selectmen meeting agenda, you'll find the link to get in on the Zoom or call in. You can also get the town meeting, the meeting packet for this meeting at the website. The other point for everyone here is that we will be recording this and it will be broadcast on Medfield TV. So thanks once again to Medfield TV. If you're in the room and you're speaking, we'll ask you to use the microphone. It's not to amplify your voice in this room, it's to pick up the audio track so that it comes out clearly on TV. So you won't notice the microphone's doing anything but the people who are listening. It'll make a big difference for them. And then the next thing we would like to do is just take a moment to consider our appreciation of our service members who are protecting and defending our country across the world. Thank you. We're going to start this evening with a public statement that I'll be reading on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. As some of you, or maybe most or all of you know, there was a public statement that was put out, actually it was filing, that was published by the police department in regard to an ongoing situation that's been a subject of some discussions here in town. So we have a public statement regarding that to provide some further information. In recent weeks, there has been public discussion surrounding the Medfield Police Department and concerns about the level of staffing. While the town is unable to share confidential personnel information due to laws governing employee privacy, there are some facts that the town can share in order to provide important and accurate context to the situation. Since March, there has been an ongoing internal affairs investigation into allegations of serious misconduct by multiple Medfield police officers. These allegations include officers intentionally sleeping on duty for several hours, at times exceeding 5 hours of a regularly scheduled 8-hour shift on a regular basis. When Chief Garrett became aware of these allegations, the town engaged an independent investigator to conduct a thorough investigation. 2 Medfield police officers were immediately placed on paid administrative leave and currently remain on leave. A number of police personnel resigned following the initiation of this investigation. While the investigation is ongoing, it has already revealed a consistent pattern of officer inactivity during the midnight shift. This inactivity has been revealed to be conduct of intentionally sleeping on duty or concealing themselves in or around the station for the purposes of intentionally avoiding active patrols. The union calls this reactive policing and is condoning this behavior. The town and the chief believe in the value of proactive policing, patrolling our streets, protecting our homes, stopping drunk drivers, and preventing local businesses from being broken into overnight is the standard of safety that Medfield residents deserve. The actions of the union make it clear that they do not share our values of proactive policing. Medfield police officers are expected to perform their duties regardless of which shift they work. However, the union believes that it is a change in working conditions for the midnight shift to be expected to actively patrol during the overnight hours. The Medfield Police Department is funded by our tax dollars, and the residents of Medfield should expect that all of our police officers are engaged in active patrols during all shifts. One of the core principles of the Medfield Police Department is our commitment to proactive community policing. Long, consistent periods of inactivity do not meet the standard of service that the chief requires and that the citizens of Medfield deserve. The town would also like to address the public discussion regarding perceived forced overtime issues and vacancies within the police department. Police departments must maintain certain levels of staffing for each shift in order to ensure they are meeting their community's public safety needs. As a result, vacancies and shifts must be filled. In accordance with Medfield Police Department procedures, officers are first offered the overtime on a voluntary basis. If all officers refuse the overtime opportunity, the police chief is then forced to order an officer to cover the shift. Since beginning the narrative that officers should be allowed to sleep on the midnight shift, the union has engaged in a concerted pattern of refusing voluntary overtime to create a force. Payroll records show that Medfield police officers have worked less overtime shifts in fiscal year 2022 than in any of the preceding 6 fiscal years. This demonstrates that the union's narrative about overworked officers under Chief Garrett's tenure is clearly false in an attempt to distract the public from the gross misconduct of certain officers. We are committed to providing the quality and level of service that the citizens of Medfield deserve from their police department. We will take the necessary steps to ensure that actions by individual officers do not jeopardize that quality and level of service. That's the completion of our statement. Okay, first appointment that we have is with the Board of Health. They provide an update. So Steve, right. Welcome. Hi, thanks. Take it away. Bring it up to a lighter note, please.
All right, thanks for meeting with us. We hope we can, that this can be the start of more regular periodic interactions with the Board of Selectmen. Tonight, I'll just make a few brief remarks to update you on the activities of the Board of Health. I'm especially pleased to foreshadow that it will not all be about COVID for once. The main thing I would like to highlight is the big uptick in public health services in Medfield that we are seeing already, thanks to the creation of the public health nurse position, which has been ably filled by Brenda Healy, who's here tonight, and who's filled that since November of last year. Last year, when the Board of Health advocated for the creation of the public health nurse position, we told you that the pressures of dealing with the COVID pandemic revealed areas where Medfield's public health infrastructure was strong, but also where it had some weaknesses. In particular, through a reliance on contract public health nursing services, we struggled through the pandemic with issues related to accessing epidemiological data necessary for smart, quick decision-making, and we found a lack of control over contact tracing logistics. We did not have the capacity to run our own vaccination clinics or to provide anything but bare minimum preventive health screenings and outreach to vulnerable and isolated members of our community. We also had little bandwidth to pursue low-hanging fruit opportunities to augment our capacity through grants and by programs that provide volunteers. Now much of that has changed. Brenda holds multiple health clinics per week at locations such as the Council on Aging, Tilden Village, Wilkins Glen, and Food Pantry. She's even started doing some home visits to private residents who are shut in. Nancy and Brenda have noted an uptick in phone calls and drop-ins at the townhouse because awareness of public health services is growing. We now have COVID testing available, and importantly, we have access to Maven, which is the information system, the state information system with the public health data that we need, and can run whatever reports we need to track outbreaks and gather information on responses to infectious disease and so forth. And we're able to provide a COVID dashboard to the public that it has more granular data than previously we were able to do. Brenda has already secured 3 small grants that support the infrastructure for running vaccination clinics. This includes special refrigerators for storing vaccine and monitoring their temperature so you know the integrity of the vaccine hasn't been compromised, and a special mobile vaccine carrier for transporting the vaccine to various locations where you might want to administer it. Also, I think you've secured 2 laptop computers to help with vaccine clinics, and a grant for medical equipment such as emergency first aid kits, blood pressure cuffs, and so on, that can also facilitate outreach to community members. In short, in the future, if another pandemic occurs, we'll be in far better position to confront it locally. And moreover, even when there is no pandemic, and hopefully there won't be, our routine level of public health service to residents is significantly enhanced. Another way in which we've augmented service delivery is through participation with Needham and Dover in shared services grants from the state. I believe that there's a packet that Carol circulated that gives you some more detail on that. One of these grants supports contact tracing for every positive PCR test for COVID, and we've had over 1,100 contact tracing calls since January that have been followed up using this shared services grant. And the other grant is for augmenting environmental health services, and that's one where we're still working out, how it matches with Medfield's needs and how we can make the best of it. But in short, these new collaborations with other towns are not only a learning opportunity to see what other towns do, but it's also a foundation to build on and to better work with other towns, which can be an asset if we do have emergencies and regional issues to respond to. In other news, we've been collaborating with Medfield Outreach, and I hope I'm not stealing their thunder as far as tobacco compliance, but that's been going very well. As far as I understand it, so far our town businesses did not sell tobacco to underage buyers during their undercover shopper part of this program, which is good. And smaller issues related to signage compliance and so forth have been corrected. We also have two major priorities remaining for this year as a Board of Health. One is to get AEDs, which are the automatic emergency defibrillators for the sports fields in town. And Board Member Holly Rand, who's here, has been working with Chief Carrico and Kevin Ryder at Park and Rec and Christine to develop the project and pursue funding options. And presently, we've put in a request, as I understand it, with Rep. Garlick to see if there might be a possibility for some state funding for this project. And so we'll go from there. The other major priority is to improve coordination of the process regarding stormwater regulations that are within the Board of Health purview, believe it or not, but also overlap with other town board processes for overseeing construction projects. Our board is blessed with several members that are practicing clinicians who work on delivering social services, substance abuse, mental health counseling, and experts in public health epidemiology and economics. But until recently, we did have a bit of a gap when it came to stormwater regulations and construction projects. Fortunately, Jeff Kane has joined us as an associate member last year, and he is our point person for improving this aspect of our portfolio of services. That's all I have. I wanted to note that Brenda is here, as are other members of the board, and Nancy, and we're happy to take questions or feedback. Thank you.
No questions other than I applaud what the whole group has done this entire time through the struggles of COVID, coming out of COVID. I know Holly, and I hear just wonderful things. So I'm just proud that you represent the Board of Health, and I appreciate everything you do and genuinely have the utmost respect for you guys. Thank you.
It's just very impressive how you guys have grown over the past couple of years. So thank you for taking on more, doing more. I guess I'm sort of perplexed by stormwater in town, just because it seems to be so bifurcated as to how it's dealt with. I know that my wife Deb is on the Conservation Commission, and they deal with stormwater, and I guess the building department does as well. Should we be doing something differently with the way we work with stormwater?
Yeah,
Since you've got an expert, I'm just wondering if
Right.
the other people should be sharing the expert.
Exactly. So I am not the Board of Health's expert on stormwater. I think Christine can potentially fill in some on what's going on, but there is an effort between Sarah and so forth to sort of understand what all the different parts of the town that touch stormwater and what their role should be, and to see if there's anything we can do one aspect of it is whether the stormwater regulations that the Board of Health themselves have are up to date with sort of current state level regulations. And so that's one aspect. And the other aspect is, is actually the process that one goes through when someone has a project that they want to build and they have to come before the board to get approval related to stormwater, but they also have to go to the planning board and other boards. And well, you don't necessarily want that to feel redundant, and at the same time, we want to make sure that all of the checks and balances that are intended through that process are met. So I think there is an exploration of seeing whether there's something that we can do, and perhaps it's bifurcated by the scale of the project to some extent, how we go about making sure that there is compliance with all the various regulations in town and the different boards that they reside with.
Oh, go ahead.
So I do have a working knowledge of the jurisdictional and the overlap, and I'd be happy to confer with you folks and coordinate.
Yeah, that's great.
From a town standpoint, it seems like it would make a lot of sense to have one point of contact for someone who's coming in and trying to do something in town so that they can get the answer that they need in as easy a way as possible, and that gets the town protected, but doesn't make them, as you say, redundantly go to 3 different groups to get stormwater answers. So
Unfortunately, it's coming from different sources in state and federal law, so there is an overlap that has developed either, if not intentionally, de facto. So we could try to minimize and coordinate, and for one thing, when an applicant goes to multiple boards, you try to coordinate and streamline that. But the latest driver, which resulted in the stormwater reg that we adopted 2 years ago, I think, was the MS4, which is the EPA administered through DEP control on the town, the DPWs handling the stormwater. And they required you they're requiring you to do indirectly what they don't want to do directly to enforce the Clean Water Act. So they imposed a requirement for a town-wide stormwater regulation, which we have in place. By default, it's the DPW. That being said, Conservation Commission's jurisdiction was preserved, Board of Health was preserved, because Board of Health actually has a specific authorization under the subdivision control law, as well as Title V for private septic, so it's all very complicated.
But Sarah has a great group that's working together to try and address some of those items as well, as Steve mentioned and as you mentioned.
yeah, good. Yeah.
Just a couple of comments that I've said this before, but I continue to think about the circumstances and how all but Carol joined this Board of Health before COVID-19, and there are certain things that have occurred over the 5 years I've been a selectman that either we did make a decision or we allowed a decision, and then in the aftermath you'd say, well, that was a really brilliant move, except you weren't smart enough to know that it was brilliant. You just flat out really got lucky. And I've always viewed your collective arrival in being a Board of Health at a point in time when this unforeseen epidemic, pandemic hit us, and we actually had, my guess is we could have probably matched just about any town's Board of Health anywhere in southeast, probably east, probably all of Massachusetts in terms of qualifications. So once again, I so much appreciate you were here when we most needed you. The second thing is you were starting to talk about stormwater, and I found myself going back, okay, so we had an epidemiologist here on the Board of Health when we needed him for a virus, and now we're asking him to, you all collectively, to get really smart about stormwater. And I'm wondering, and we kind of suckered you into getting on the Board of Health the first one, and now we got this next one coming, and I'm saying, so what, next year maybe it's going to be cosmic rays or something like that. I'm just wondering what the totally unforeseen threat will be that we'll be asking you to be prepared to help us navigate. I have one question, and maybe it's a stupid question, or it's an impossible question, or it's a useless question. In looking back at the very beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic and our town's response to it, my sense is that in many ways, because of your collective wisdom, we called some shots under high degrees of uncertainty that were actually, in my own view at least, in retrospect, really about as good shots as you could call on these things. As you reflect back on it, are there things, recognizing we didn't have all the things we have now, but given where we were in terms of what was in place and what wasn't in place, is there anything about what we did back, in 2020, into 2021 that you'd look back and say, yeah, one thing we shouldn't have done was this. It would have been smarter for us to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. So I'm by training, or in my day job, I'm a decision scientist, and basically do analyzing decisions under uncertainty. And one of the things is that one of the sort of cardinal rules of that is that you have to make a decision with the information that you have. And sometimes in hindsight, you would make a different decision, but that doesn't mean it was the wrong decision at the time you made it. And I think that in large part in Medfield, the kinds of actions that we took, both on the school side and the town side, were, given the information that we had at the time, probably good decisions. There's a few things that we learned, obviously, along the way. We learned a lot about the virus, how it's transmitted, and so forth, that allowed us to revise. And I think the other thing that we did a pretty decent job of, to the extent that we could, obviously we had to act early at the beginning, when the state wasn't really acting yet. We were sort of acting as a town before we had good guidance from the state as to what to do, right? And then as the epidemic evolved, the state set some standards and benchmarks for what policy would be, whether it was in schools or with Department of Health, and businesses, and capacity restrictions in businesses and so forth. So then we tended to follow the lead of the state, because we're a small town, and we didn't. You can be more restrictive, but not less restrictive, and there never was much time in Medfield where it seemed like we needed to be more restrictive, because for whatever reason, the pandemic never hit us really, really hard, which is probably an issue of density and demographics and so on. I think that some of the hardest stuff to figure out was around what to do with schools and hybrid learning and space, and whether 6 feet between desks, and whether masks would make a difference with kids, and whether they would wear them. So those were some of the hardest ones, and there might be things that we would do differently in terms of sort of setting thresholds for, if you remember the stoplights of like, oh, we're a red community or a yellow community or green, or but basically I look back and think that either we got really lucky or we did a reasonable job of sort of steering our way through with the information that we had. And I thought the town, was, also townspeople who had a lot of concerns, and especially at the beginning when there was so much unknown about it, and you had, there were consistently like a lot of views within town across the spectrum, from, wanting to be really, say, precautionary and err towards safety, and other people who wanted to be more open, and I think it took us some time to realize that that heterogeneity in opinion, and people naturally have different levels of risk tolerance and so forth, and that we weren't going to pick solutions that worked for everybody every time. And so we just tried to do the best we could, I guess.
Well, you did a good job. Carol?
I have to say something. Do I have to? All,
He's got a
You can
mic
do
for
that
you.
too.
I just wanted to say that Mass General Law 111, we're a policy board, right? We do what, as Steve said, the governor had 40 orders that Christine and Nancy and Bridget had to enforce, and Chief Garrett and Desi had orders that the schools had to follow. But I feel that what our town did, there was a lot of loss with those regulations, but I feel that, as Steve started to say, the town came together and worked together and respected each other and understood that there were things that we as a town had to do. And that was really out of our control. But if you asked me, and I do have an answer, from day one, Christine became like our health director. She ran every Zoom every week, sometimes twice a week. And I've known Christine a long time, and I'm speaking from my heart. I work with 4 towns in my grant. I work across the state. I don't know another town manager that did that for so long. I was the chair then. We were very close. And some days, tougher than others. So my thing is, this board, I feel blessed. Holly's a physician's assistant. Melissa's a floor nurse with getting her nurse practitioner. Kathy Thompson, truthfully, and then I'll stop. She was the public health nurse. She ran the schools. She is the guardian angel until we could hire Brenda, because we had the VNA, very minimal. So as you know, I was a therapist. I tend to talk from my heart. Our success is because Christine became a part of us, led us, and then Nancy had to enforce all these regulations and school stuff. So I'm grateful, because now we do have Brenda, and we are really depending on each other to move forward and do try to enhance services. So it was a long 1.5 years, but I really appreciate Christine. I know every other person does too, because she was our anchor. So I'll stop.
Thanks, Carol.
You've known me 30 years. I talk too long.
Well, with that, we'll go to our second appointment. And for that,
If in real life people are going to comply and adhere, so you kind of build that into models.
Where do you work?
Harvard School of Public Health.
Oh, okay. Fascinating.
82 million wasted vaccine doses.
Are we-
82 million.
Are we still waiting for Medfield TV?
Getting there.
I see movement up there.
So my dad was a professor at Harvard Medical School, and he would have loved to have talked to you. He's
I tried.
We just, Mark hasn't had a chance to review the contract, so we'd like to have
Okay.
him review it first.
Yeah.
Is that my business? Is that our business?
Yes. Sorry.
It's the
I
same.
forgot about it. I know, but we just haven't even looked at it.
That's
I think they lost it in their issue. We're fine.
Because we're fine, right?
We're
Yeah.
fine, yeah.
I'm watching Holly. I'm like, are we gonna be able to get in the elevator? Hope it doesn't stop.
So while we're waiting to go on to the outreach, I just wanted to comment about Board of Health. It sounds like you guys, through a crisis, basically coalesced incredibly, and it sounds like you've gotten to a very good place. So thank you for all of your work and help to the town. And Christine, thank you too.
Oh, you're welcome. We made a really, really great team.
Yes, we get along with one of the things that I liked about what you did was it felt like you guided the town with a light rein. And as a selectman, there's issues we faced at this level, like around the state hospital. Certainly, we were listening to your views, but I personally was very sensitive to, on one hand, recognizing the importance of having that light rein without crossing over into kind of like cavalier sloppiness. And the public discourse didn't help figure that out. It was all just kind of calling it the way. So I know it was the class of 2020 at the state hospital in May that really was like that for me is the crux point for this whole thing, is how you leave things open enough for graduating seniors to kind of do the things graduating seniors are going to do, knowing that they probably aren't the most vulnerable population. And they're outside and trying to figure out what rules to allow. At the level that we're at, it was those kinds of issues that really weighed heavily on me.
Okay.
You don't want to go too tight, but you can't just open the corral gate either. And I actually did look to a lot of what I heard you say, even independent policy statements. That was just the thinking. In many ways, and Steve, I think you were the spokesperson probably that I heard in terms of the voice of the Board of Health. But in many ways, I was probably relying on your voice and your views than anyone else. Which, no pressure, but that's probably a true that's a true statement. I was, not because you're smarter than anybody else. Maybe you are, but
And not because I blamed it on you either.
no, I didn't blame it on you. But you understood us, you understood the town, you understood the circumstance, and you understood the medical side of it. And it was like, oh, that's probably as good a person to get.
If this goes sideways.
No, we were very lucky, and I appreciate Carol's comments, but it was the Board of Health pulling all of the weight on that, so much appreciated.
So one thing I didn't ask you, Steve, was I was fascinated by your comment that your day job is a scientist with uncertainty. What sort of uncertainty do you deal with and work with?
There we
Well, I mostly work on economic evaluation.
No, Zoom didn't crash, just their feed.
So we're trying to decide,
So we're getting lots of questions.
whether you should use this vaccine or that vaccine, or whether you should implement this nutritional program in Africa or that one, that kind of stuff. But a lot in all of those cases, you have to make a decision, to either invest in this technology or not. And there are all kinds of uncertainties. You might have the clinical trials, but yet, you don't really know how much it's going to cost, or if in real life people are going to comply and adhere. So you kind of build that into models.
Where do you work?
Harvard School of Public Health.
Oh, okay. Fascinating.
82 million wasted vaccine doses.
Are we-
82 million.
Are we still waiting for Medfield TV?
Getting there.
I see movement up there.
Okay. So my dad was a professor at Harvard Medical School, and he would have loved to have talked to you. He studied the quality of medical care. But just trying to figure out how to make things better, I think, was his goal. It was the same as mine, Osler Peterson, except he was a doctor.
Well, you are too, you're gonna change.
Yeah.
Not yesterday. Oh, can I see it? I haven't seen the one that on the map.
There he is. We're good.
So Zoom has still been going. It's just that.
Yeah, so everybody's still in the meeting and Zoom, just waiting for us.
equivalent of testing 1, 2, 3. And see Scott back there.
Dramatic pause.
We're good to go apparently, Gus.
We're good?
I think so.
They can they can hear us at home, so we're good.
All right. For those at home who may have just lost that broadcast, we promise we haven't talked about anything important during the time we're waiting for Medfield TV to come back up. We are still exactly where we were on the agenda. We were about to hear from Medfield Outreach. And so take it away, Kat.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having us here tonight. We have some slides to accompany the presentation, and while Nick is pulling those up, I also just want to bring your attention to, if anyone's interested, our brochures and our resource cards that we made for the community are on the table, so if you're interested or you want to have a look, please help yourself. And just wait, Nick's got the slides. Here we go. Okay, here we go. All right, so I'm Kathy McDonald. I'm the director of Medfield Outreach. Next slide. I just wonder, some of you may not be familiar with our work. Others of you are very, very familiar with our work. We have a lot of partners in this room and board members and people who have been super supportive to our work and our mission. But our mission statement is to provide access to high quality behavioral health and social services for Medfield residents in order to optimize wellness in our community. Our vision is that we envision a community in which all people are valued, healthy, and empowered to live fulfilling lives. You may note that we changed our name from Medfield Youth Outreach to Medfield Outreach with the approval of this board back in 2020 to better reflect that our services are for all Medfield residents and not strictly for youth. Next slide. Our team, for those of you who don't know us, myself, Chelsea Goldstein Walsh, who has been a longtime member of Medfield Outreach, and Mary Haas, who is our prevention coordinator. So both Chelsea and myself are licensed mental health clinicians, and Mary is a substance use prevention coordinator. And we typically also have one graduate student from Boston College who provides clinical services from mid-September to the end of April, which increases our capacity. Next slide. What we do. So I thought it might help just to do a quick overview for those of you who don't know or might be listening at home, because part of what we know we need to do is get the word out to many residents about who we are and what we do so they can access the services for which their tax dollars support. Clinical services is one of the things we provide. Counseling, free and confidential counseling, and other clinical resources, which I will talk about in a second. Needs-based assistance, which we help determine eligibility for and create referrals to local, state, and federal assistance programs, as well as help administer in-house or local programs that I'll touch upon momentarily. And our prevention work, and this is an area we're really excited about and have been doing a tremendous amount of work, and we'll spend some time later in the program. Not only do we do prevention work as part of Medfield Outreach, but we also administer 2 community coalitions. Medfield Cares About Prevention, MCAP, which focuses on reduction of youth substance use, and our Coalition for Suicide Prevention. Next slide. I want to bring attention and a great thanks to the tremendous generosity of the Medfield Foundation Legacy Fund, who funded our ability to hire a consultant that helped us create and carry out a community needs survey. And also to thank, there were 12 committee members who provided us a lot of their time, Gus being one of those, and other folks in this room too also, that really supported the work we do, really supported this community by helping shape our survey that went out, that over 800 people took the time to answer, to really inform us about what's going on for them, and then to help us look at our strategic planning to address those needs. That should be coming, I'd say, within the next month or a little bit longer. All that information will be shared on our website, even the comment section about extra, drop down if you have anything else to share. We'll include all that. So I encourage you to take a peek at that. Next slide. Clinical services. So while we're really proud of this calendar year, from January 1st until June 10th, we have already provided I should say, we've accrued over 550 hours of clinical engagement. That's about 100 hours per month. What you may not know is last year, our annual report was about 600 hours for the entire year. So we're halfway through the year and we're almost at that number. So while I'd like to take some credit for that, it's sort of sad that we have that level of need. And many of you have probably seen Boston Globe has had a couple of articles recently, one as recently as yesterday, really stressing two things, the takeaway points: the lack of inpatient beds and therefore the importance of outpatient treatment. We're losing outpatient providers. So I think the article cited for every 10 that come into the field, we lose 13 out. So we're in a deficit of outpatient provision. And what we know is when kids need the hospital, that's just to stabilize them. It's really just to keep them safe. The work and the workforce that's happening in outpatient clinics. Typically, what we would do, and what we still do, is try to find people longer term treatment in our collateral agencies. It's harder and harder to find that right now because of lack of resources, because people are full, because we're in a mental health crisis. So we're finding our residents turning more and more and more to us, to our department, to help them stay hanging on until something longer term can open up. So that's our demand, that's what we're seeing. And we continue to see that. Our survey reflects that. The MWAS data hasn't been released yet, reflects the increased mental health crisis that the kids are in. So clinical service is something that this community is telling us is a great area of need for them. Next slide, please. What do our clinical services entail? Here's some of what it entails, but not in its entirety. Obviously, individual therapy. I'm trying to increase parent work and parent support. So if a family has 2-3 kids, you support the parents, you're helping all 3 kids instead of just individual therapy with the children. Clinical consultations, that might look like a consultation from guidance. It could be from one of the nurses that has someone presenting in their office. It could be from a parent. Sometimes we get clinical consultation requests from kids who are 18 years old. College kids, we're getting more and more requests from that demographic. We know those kids are really struggling. Also, we provide consultations if we have a client that has involvement with other agencies. We might do like a sort of a case consultation, if you will, how to support our client in other areas of his or her life. And then, of course, referrals to other therapeutic resources, as I had already mentioned. We have 2 full-time clinical social workers, myself and Chelsea. As you can imagine, being the director of the program, I cannot attribute as much of my time as I would like to clinical services. So, but we're doing a lot. In addition, like I said, we do make use of those graduate clinical interns. They're fabulous. If we can get creative with our space, I'd like to have 2 clinical interns. So again, that could increase capacity without increasing cost. Next slide. Needs-based assistance. This is another big chunk of what we do. These things are very hard to measure. The clinical stuff's a little bit easier to measure. The amount of referrals is very difficult to measure. We say we provide at least 800, but one call could result in 4, 5 referrals. It could be fuel assistance, it could be raft, it could be referrals to food cupboard. So it's tough. We're really looking, any people out there in the IT world or people with databases that can help us find a way to capture this data. We're really looking for help here. It's part of our strategic plan that we're looking for too, is how do we really measure. I'm saying you look at me, so I might connect with you after. I'm hoping you have some genius idea. But a lot of what we do is really working with our families and our individuals in Medfield, listening to their needs, and as social workers, figuring out the right fit and trying to find other resources, appropriate resources for them that can address those needs, which may be local, may not be, could be statewide, could be federal. Next slide. So not only do we make referrals, but we also have a bunch of what we would call needs-based programs. And I want to point out, again, this highlights our very close collaboration with the Medfield Foundation, who are super creative in responding to the needs of the Medfield community and have relied upon the Medfield Outreach Office to de-identify and help match these resources to Medfield residents. So Christmas Angels, New Life Furniture Referrals, Gift of Reading is a new program started by Cara Gellermini, who is a teacher in the middle school. She really wanted to put a book in everybody's hands in the middle school and below that needed it, that might otherwise go without a new book, and didn't quite know how she could do that in a confidential way, and partnered with Medfield Outreach and Park Street Books. And so this is sort of the benefit of being small and able to respond to people's needs, is that we can be creative, we're listening to the needs in the community, and we really rely on our partnerships with other departments like the Board of Health, like Council on Aging, like Parks and Rec. I mean, really, you'll see a list in a minute. We have so many partners, and that's something we pride ourselves on, because we need to do this work together to keep our community healthy. Medfield Food Cupboard, Birthday Wishes, you can see the list, Campership Fund, Public Need Fund, Fuel Assistance, all super programs that many, many families in this community make use of. Next slide. Prevention programming. So this is what we're really excited about. Prevention programming, this year alone, and we have, this school year alone, we have reached over 2,000 kids with our prevention programming. So if you know your school enrollment, that's almost the school enrollment, right? So we have done all sorts of programs, and Nick, will you progress to the next slide for me? I think I'm probably speaking to the next slide at this point. Part of the reason that we can do this is in 2019, we were awarded the Drug-Free Communities Grant, which allowed us to hire a full-time substance use prevention coordinator. And she doesn't just do substance use prevention coordinating, she does mental health. With prevention, this prevention is prevention, and these things are overlapped. So we have been able to really increase our programming and our collaboration and our partnerships to address the needs of the youth in this community, to have healthier youth, to learn about all kinds of things, their feelings about substance use, the pressures on them, why someone might use, how they use, where they get it, why some don't, what are the protective factors, how do we continue to build upon those. We're so lucky I just want to say that we're so fortunate not only to have this grant, but we're fortunate to have an outreach department. Not every town has an outreach department, and I think it says something about the care in this community about funding this program, right, and keeping this department and the residents here. And so, I heard Carol speak to how fortunate she feels to be collaborating with the other professionals in her department, and I feel the same way. And it's not just the people within our department; it's all the extra people that keep helping us keep this work going. So, prevention programming is an important part of what we're doing right now. It's important to let you know that that grant that I mentioned is a 5-year grant. We're almost in year 4. During year 5, we will need to apply for a competitive bid cycle process for year 6 through 10. We're optimistic we will get it, but if we don't, it is certainly something that I really would work hard and really sort of look to the Midfield community to find resources to keep this going, because prevention is proactive and intervention is reactive, and this is the way we keep our kids well and try to keep them out of more intensive type of services. Next slide. So we do our prevention programming in a variety of ways. Some we do in the schools and some we do in the community. I am not going to try to go over every program that we've done. I'm going to highlight a few so you have a sample or an idea of the different types of prevention programming that we've done just this school year alone. We've had speakers come in, so eating disorders speaker came in from Meta. We have done suicide prevention work. We've had a panel of experts talk to the community about suicide prevention. We have done our mental health May initiatives. Next slide. We've done Red Ribbon Week. That's tough to say. It's a tongue twister. We've had field trips. Our wellness grades in the middle school have brought some kids over so they know who Medfield Outreach is, what we do, so when they come up to the high school, they'll understand where our office is, and they'll feel a little more comfortable. Coming there, you see like what looks like the Jeopardy board. We've gone into wellness classes and done some general prevention work in a Jeopardy type of game, giving out prizes for the winning teams. Everybody really got a prize. We've rewarded everybody. Up top, that purple thing is the front and back of our resource card that the police department has been handing out on calls to community residents. Next slide. QPR is a evidence-based technique to question, persuade, refer. Is to identify and save a life, identify people that might be having suicidal thinking and be recently, Monday actually, Chelsea, myself, and Mary were certified for 3 years. We are official trainers, so we're looking forward to spreading that training to people in our community so that collectively we can keep more people safe and identify people at risk and refer them to treatment. We, down the bottom, are super proud. Steve made reference to it. We've done alcohol compliance checks and tobacco compliance checks, and I'm proud to say this community has passed, so again, the partnership in keeping this community safe and healthy. We have good community partners that are doing what they're supposed to do. Next slide. Oh, on the last slide, you don't have to go back necessarily, Nick, but we, through the funding of the grant, we paid for all the buses to and from the prom. So we provided safe transportation for over 300 kids to and from, and continue to want to fund things that are substance-free and provide safe alternatives for youth to participate in. The Self-Care Bear Initiative, I'll just highlight that, was a pre-K through 5 program that we sent a Care Bear, literally like a stuffed animal bear, to every classroom. And with that Care Bear, Self-Care Bear, came coping cards. So 10 sort of simplified, age-appropriate coping cards when you have a stress or you have a big feeling or ways to relax or things to do, that they laminated cards that they could flip through. In addition, extra activities went home with a link for parents, so parents could continue this work at home with a variety of additional activities, recommended reading, both for kids and for parents. And you'll see at the very end, there's also a life-size mascot costume of the Care Bear that can be requested to show up at events. I'm not gonna say who's gonna wear that costume, but I think her name is Mary Haas, but and Medfield Connects, we recently had an entire high school resource fair. We worked with Abby Bly, who is a sophomore at the high school, who felt strongly about bringing the resources to the students, and worked with our office to make that happen. And that took place in April and was visited by every high school student that was in school that day. Went through the cafeteria and the auditorium and had a variety of tables up of different resources. So you get the idea. Next slide. This is what I mean about a glimpse of our community partners. So there's a ton of them, and this isn't everybody. So if you're not on this slide and you've worked with us, we still really appreciate you. Don't be upset with us. We just literally ran out of room. And thank you for working with us. We really need it and appreciate it. Next slide. Always we want to leave you with resources. So if anybody at home or here needs local support or a crisis line, we'll leave that up for a second, that you can make note of those numbers, and we try to make a point to always leave you with something. And then, well, you have to go to the last slide, Nick, because I talked about the bear costume. There it is. So there's our new sign, our new branding, and there's the life-size Care Bear. So if you want to visit for a Self-Care Bear, say the word. And that's what I have for you today.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're very welcome.
I'll start first to the phone. Why don't we start with you? Are there any questions from the floor? Not that you have to have them, just making sure we kind of gloss over this. Okay, then I'll do it. I'll leave you.
All right. So curious, Kathy, since I'm new to this and new to this whole program, I walk my dog through the high school quite frequently, so I see the sign there. Do you have like satellite hours up at Council of Aging, or do most people come to your location?
So that's a great question. Do we have satellite hours? Not yet. But when I came in front of the select board in the warrant committee, when Parks and Rec came, well, how long ago was that?
In the fall.
In the fall, when we talked about space and growing programs and working collaboratively and having sort of maybe satellite office in an elementary school on one day, or Parks and Rec, or doing programming. One of the things I've talked to Kevin about, and we just need more time together, is offering some prevention programming during summer camp, right? Going in for an hour here or an hour there, or finding a way to reach. We know where the kids are, right? Going into places and doing that. Council on Aging would be another one. I'm super eager to work. We know that the population in this town, our growing population, outnumbers. It's our seniors, right? Mm-hmm. They outnumber everyone. They're going to continue. So we know that we're going to need more resources there to address that. So we're looking to do that kind of work. But is it established at this moment? No. But is it something that we're curious about and want to do? Yes.
Okay, cool. And you mentioned early in the presentation that you are getting ready to release the results of your survey.
Yeah.
Can you share a few nuggets? Did anything surprise you, good, bad, or different? Like those age groups that maybe that responded over others, or?
So it was all adults because we didn't have permission to interview the youth. But I will say that we knew that the MWAS had been, the Metro West Youth Adolescent Health Survey was being administered this year for the middle and high school. So we knew we were going to have great data through the MWAS results. So we did 18 and up, and we found, unsurprisingly, that mental health concerns were right up there. Screen time, parents were worried about their kids' screen time also, right? Coming off the heels of the pandemic, I think we're all probably worried about our screen time. And then the other thing that we found both in our key informant, we did some key informant interviews with students and group interview surveys with parents, is what could be called one of two things. On our community needs survey came as needing to fit in or being afraid to be different in this community. And the language that I think means the same thing, but it's slightly different language in those surveys and key informant interviews was fitting into the what was called the Medfield bubble. So I think that there's a real concern in this community about fitting in and to be accepted. And we're hearing that from adults and even around the use of substances and permissiveness around substances and what's considered normal. And as it relates to maybe stigma around mental health and looking for help there, both with youth and adults. So that's something that we saw too.
Well, and I'll say a number that impressed me when you were going through your presentation is when you think of the number of students that are enrolled in the Medfield school system and how many you touched. I mean, kudos to you, because I'll go back. Like, I think when I was younger, I would have been gun shy, right, to reach out. So do you see that as parents are being open to it, that peers may see another peer and say, been there, you should go? Like, I'm intrigued at how that's just an impressive number.
So I think there's a couple of things. I think we really need to thank the Medfield Public Schools for allowing us to collaborate with them and allowing us access to their students. I think that's huge. And without that partnership, that number would not look like that. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that is through wellness and through partnering with the wellness teachers and looking at their curriculum and looking at how we can help supplement that. And so a lot of those numbers are from us going in-house and providing presentations, or even with early childhood classes. We did a presentation for the early childhood classes on the importance of play, mental health in children, and the use of play therapy because they were interested in working with kids. And then we've done general presentations on what we know the most highest prevalence of youth disorders, which is anxiety and depression. So those we let the kids vote on what they wanted to learn about, and then we went in and did brief overviews, and we tried to really educate them about what's normal and typical. It's typical to be sad sometimes. It's typical to be anxious sometimes. And when is it? How do we know it's a problem? And because we didn't want to sort of pathologize or get people worried. We want to say some of these feelings are really normal and it's okay. And here's when you might think about asking for help. And so it was really sort of prevention work.
Well, thank you very much. This is super informative, and kudos to you and your whole team. That's phenomenal.
Thank you.
So I have my stormwater question for you, which is that human services seems to be kind of spread out in different areas in town. Should we be trying to have a human services department or some sort of collaboration, or is there something that we can do that we're not doing now, I guess, is that you've seen and noticed?
Yeah, so I think, and I think any service provider here can speak to this, when you have the support and time to collaborate with other people that are doing similar work, it provides two things. It helps you support one another, and there's some real stress and burnout that can happen with trying to keep, especially when you're working with people that are having problems or struggles. So it's a really way to sort of support one another, and it also allows for creativity. It allows for sharing of resources, space, money, staff.
Yeah.
So I think it's the way to go, and I think it's the future. Yeah, I think social services, we should be talking to one another and looking at what we're doing and find out a way to collaborate, definitely.
So the schools seem to have emphasized social emotional assistance to their population a lot more recently.
Well, I think the schools, I think probably Dr. Marsden or Dr. Worley would speak to that, but I would say I think schools in general are being tasked more and more to address mental health. And I think that, again, I sound like a broken record, but I think a collaborative approach on what happens when the kids leave the school building and how do we make sure that there's sort of a transition of care, or who only needs care in the guidance council, right, in the guidance office, who needs therapy session in school, because some might when you have school social workers, and who needs a medical eval, and who needs family work, and who needs, and when do we know that we need a higher level of intervention, and also the use of supervision in my field is required, right? So clinical supervision, you're using yourself as a tool, and so you need to really be getting supervision to make sure someone helps you see your blind spots, because we all have them. So there's enough work for everybody, and the schools can do their share for sure.
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is, if everybody's working in their silos and you guys never have a chance to get together and compare notes and to brainstorm how to do it better across the whole community, should we be trying to help you do that, or should we?
Sure, Pete, we'll take help with doing that. Yeah, I think that everybody is so conscientious in trying to help so many people that it leaves everybody really, really, really busy, because we know we're in an epidemic with mental health. But yeah, I think communication and collaboration, even though we have some, more would be beneficial. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Gus, I know you have some.
but yeah, so I'll not too many, just two.
Okay.
One's almost an observation. You've been first off, an observation just about how you've been orchestrating Medfield Outreach, I guess would be the way to put it, is one thing that strikes me is that you are, my sense is at least, that you're doing a good job of connecting to these other town departments, town programs, and it's kind of an interesting thing. I'm almost going to make a point a little bit opposite of Pete, as opposed to pulling things into a structure. There's this fine balance between allowing individual structures to do what they do, but then in that, if everybody's doing what they do, then Pete's right, then they have a bunch of silos in town. If at least somebody is not only doing the main thing that they do, but also has the strategic view and creativity and collaboration skills, whatever you want to call it, to sit there and say, if we could do what we do and make that be half, and you do the other half, this thing that neither one of us could do is what we're going to do, and it's that much better. My sense is that when we've talked, the way I hear you talk tells me the way you think is in trying to strike that sort of balance between allowing individual organizations to be the thing that they are, that they specialize in. At the same time, you promote the collaboration and the shared focus on addressing the needs. So there's this synergy without necessarily making it all permanent structure. I'm watching that and saying, well, I'm not exactly sure how to define it, how to quantify it, but it feels to me like it's definitely going in a good direction. With that as an introduction, one impression I have, and I'm not trying to push a new capital project onto the top of a list of capital projects, but it strikes me that if I look long-term, for you to do what you need to do, now that you're Medfield Outreach, not Medfield Youth Outreach, your physical location in the school is a bit of a contradiction for what you are doing. And I'm not suggesting you need your own unique building to do everything that you're doing, because some of this would be collaboration. But I'm just curious if we went 10 years down the road, that's probably even an aggressive time frame, how would you see Medfield Outreach ideally being physically configured in terms of where, how, what does it look like in a physical asset sense?
So I'm thinking about Steve's discussion earlier, which you make the decision at the moment with the pieces you have. So my answer now, I could change my mind. Right now, I would love to see social services working together. So any sort of that social service umbrella, maybe working more closely together, because one of our strengths is also our weakness. Our strength of being at the high school means that we have very close access to high school students. I think that there's no coincidence that tends to be our biggest consumer. We're there, we're close, we have proximity. We certainly know there are other people that need our help, right? So I think that, I like the idea of having a social service hub. I think that satellite clinics or shared space is essential, right? So in conversely, so too, like, I think we all could be less territorial about our space and share more. Easier said than done, because I know that sounds like, can't we all share? Well, when you need manipulatives like toys and sand trays and doll houses, now you're not just saying we just need a chair in a nice room. Now you need a place to put your stuff. So there are some obstacles there, but in summary, a hub with satellite clinics would be the way I would do it. And the satellite clinics could be within the schools, even especially if there are schools that could leave certain parts of the building open after hours, because you have to remember, like, we see the high school has a schedule now, a flex schedule, which allows us some access to kids during school. That is not true of the other grades. So anyone else, you're talking about an after-school appointment.
Is that a Medfield Outreach hub, or is that a Medfield Social Services hub, of which Medfield Outreach would be one of the spokes in the wheel, if you will?
I think either. Yeah, we're not proprietary. It doesn't. Yeah, that I'm not anyway.
I was thinking more of trying to get my head wrapped around what it is we would be trying to do.
As long as it's a brand new building and really nice with good coffee and refreshments and very comfortable chairs, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
This meeting's gone 2 minutes too long. Just saying.
The second question I have for you, it was actually prompted by, I was at a college graduation this weekend, and one of the key speakers at one of the events was an interesting talk. And one of the things he said something that I sort of wasn't expecting a college professor these days to say. He was talking about, the loss of trust in our society and the reasons why. And he had a model for doing it. He talked about, well, you have to take a risk to trust somebody, and then when you take that risk and they trust you, they return the trust, then you wind up getting this righteous cycle of cohesion that we have been methodically breaking apart for 6, 7, 8 years right now. When he said that, he mentioned the institutions in our society that have been breaking. And he happened to mention churches, but my real point is the broad category of non-government organizations. So in this discussion here, we've talked a lot about town departments and how they could work together. That's really important. I'm curious whether, and I know you have like a good relationship with Medfield Foundation because that's an important source of funding. Are there important non-town organizations that either are already playing an important role I'm looking for the big picture of what Medfield Outreach is doing. So I'm using broad perspective here. Either are doing that right now, or it's a shame that they're not doing that right now, and it would be great if we were doing more of it as a town.
So here's where I'd say, like, I have my knowledge, and then I'm thinking that these folks here have a lot of knowledge, but we do partner with Chenna 7, so we get funding from them to support specifically we put that money towards our interface referral program. But there are requirements of our community healthcare providers to support the communities, the Metro West area that they practice in, right, to promote wellness and keep folks healthy. And so we do reach to those institutions and look for funding and try to apply it in programming. The problem is manpower, quite frankly, to find that money, to write the grants, to get it.
Money. I was actually talking programmatic.
Well, so to create the programs, we need even that, right? So even just to create the programs, we're taxed right now with our manpower. Like we're stretched. Mm-hmm. So could we work more collaboratively or work more with these agencies? Maybe. Do we have the time right now to lean into that and look at it? Not really. Right. And maybe that's where I could rely on other people's expertise. But then so sometimes we'll have emails and they'll be like, grant cycle or this or that. Can't do it. But if I had another full-time person, I could do it. And I could take people off that wait list. So I want to say to the Medfield community that's listening, if you have reached out for support from Medfield Outreach and we have not been able to help you, we have not forgotten about you. We are trying to move things along. We are trying to be creative. We understand the need. We hear you. I just want to make sure that people know that if they've called and they're on a non-wait list, because I don't like to say wait list, because it might stop people from looking for other leads, and I don't think that's the right thing to do in this marketplace. I think you need to keep looking for all leads, but we look at those names and we worry about those people on those lists, and we keep circling back and saying, how you doing? Are you still waiting? So we're trying. Did I answer that question, Gus? I think I took it.
We'll keep
I
talking.
think
Yeah,
I
you partly did.
move that into an area I wanted to go into instead of staying on topic. So.
Great, thanks, Kathy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is to discussion about the special town meeting, the Medfield State Hospital redevelopment and land disposition agreement with Trinity Financial, and we will be potentially, and I think probably, taking a vote on recommendations for Articles 1 and 2 at the special town meeting, along with a vote to approve, sign, and place the land disposition agreement in escrow pending the special town meeting vote. And Todd, I see you're here, so welcome. And Scott, I see you're here. Welcome to you as well. Should we start with the broad discussion of the special town meeting and how it's going to work, and then jump into the articles? Is that
Sure.
Does that work? So we'll let Scott lead this discussion off here.
Hello again. So this is just partially a follow-up and partially just a reiteration of our conversation last week. So we are preparing. We've had a technology walkthrough, and we've met with Marion and her team, and had the chance to meet with Amy as well today. So logistically, all coming together as it does with the cooperation of everybody. Just in terms of kind of the highlights relative to the meeting, we know that the main venue is going to continue to be the high school gym. There will be an outdoor tent that will be set up for anybody that feels that they want to be outdoors. I just looked at the forecast. We're okay so far. A little small percentage of rain, but we'll see.
I'm not looking at it yet,
Yeah,
so you're
yeah.
ahead of me.
Way too far. And then we'll also have the library set aside for any seniors, anybody who wants to socially distance in that environment. It's air conditioned, and so that will be the third venue. Parents may be accompanied by children at the outside venue. I've had a lot of conversations with parents over the course of the last week. Have described why some of the traditions that we had in town around children at town meetings took shape over time, and so it's been interesting. But I just wanted to make that note. Now, all of this is going to be contained in an open letter that I'll start to circulate the next 2 days by all of the means. It'll go to your blogs, Pete. You'll get that, and will be circulated to Colleen and I'm sure on social media in terms of arrangements. Of course, all registered voters in Medfield are encouraged to attend. Registration, I didn't confirm this with Marion, but usually starts about 45 minutes before, so we'll say at about 5:15. Other than that, we know that the sale of the land requires a 2/3 vote, so we want to emphasize that. In terms of the proceedings, after the welcome and the introduction of the evening, I expect it to go something like this. We'll do the motion to include the visitors. We'll have a lot of visitors there. The warrant committee will make a positive main motion, I think, on Article 1, although I think their final vote on that is on Thursday night. And the warrant committee will provide a report. We would have the presentation by the Medfield State Hospital Development Committee, and some presentation by Trinity Financial, comments by the Board of Selectmen. In the past, I've used at that point the opportunity to be able to have people approach the microphone to just ask questions as opposed to make comments while we had people gathered who were there, and I would probably do that again. Then I would give voice to the opposition, so we'll use our microphone number 1, microphone number 2, kind of a setup, and provide time for the opponents of the motion, and then go back and forth between proponents and opponents of that.
Scott, to be clear, you're going to start that open mic with people who simply have questions about the article.
Correct.
That will then morph into 2 mics, 1 comments for, comments against.
Exactly right. Yeah, I try to be as demanding as I can around what constitutes a question as opposed to a comment. I've asked people that questions at least to raise your voice at the end, or do what you do with a question, or put your question mark. And then on the vote on that. So the vote will come at that point. People ask me what time that will come. I gave a little bit guidance, if you remember, last November. So I don't want to really actually speak to that, but accept that if we go through what we've talked about here, that's going to take some period of time. And so, over the course of an hour, we will be doing the first part of this, having our discussion, having our deliberation. But at some point, we will then put that to a vote. When people register, they will be given wristbands as they were last November. And when the vote is called, I'll do the first vote, as we do traditionally, by voice or by hands, as that's the first tier. And if I can call it at that point, because it's very clear to me, it's hard to do in venues. I would speak to both the associate moderator who is in the library and outside, would have to be either clearly defeated or clearly passed by 2/3, because I need to make that kind of a declaration for the town clerk. If not, we will go to the vote cards, and people will file up and do what we did, and we'll try to do that with as much expedience as we can. People will put in their vote cards. Those boxes will be taken to a site at that point, and then we'll immediately begin the discussion of the second article. Everybody will know there's a proviso associated with that, which is that the second article is linked to the first article. There's some dependency there. We would start again with a warrant committee motion on Article 2 and a warrant committee report. That report might include the fact that they may move to dismiss, in fact, if Article 1 does not pass. So, and then at some point at this, in and around here, we should be getting the results back of the count that would be taking place at that neutral site within the school. And we'll have the results regarding Article 1. At that point, we'll know whether we need to proceed to a vote on Article number 2, and we would do that by a voice or hands vote. It does not require a 2/3 vote. It only requires a simple majority. Same procedure. We would have a report by the planning board on that article as we're required to do opponents and proponents of microphone number 1 and microphone number 2. So that's how I see the evening taking shape. One of the things I did underline here is to make note that we are starting at 6, which is a different time for us, but I think it's the right time to be doing this combination indoor-outdoor meeting. So that's where we are. Questions? Anything people are hearing that the public might be interested in knowing more about from just a logistical or procedural point of view about the meeting?
Are we doing a banner across the center of town, or just the signs like I see in front of the town hall right now?
Just the signs out now.
Okay. Have we gotten rid of the banner thing altogether?
There's been a problem with the banner.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm curious, did you get any feedback regarding us moving the quorum from 250 to 150?
I had a couple of comments, from people that
Okay.
think it's all part of a kind of a broader the quorum related to the date, raises questions, and but not a lot.
Yeah. I'm hoping the Trinity meeting last Wednesday, was that when it was? Thursday? There were a lot of meetings last week. We talked about, that they were they're trying to move things along, right? So we're doing this together. So June 21st is just the last date we could try to do it.
And I think that's, and to be stated, right? That's, that's what it is. And so.
Okay, thank you.
Pete?
I think it sounds well planned out, so thank you.
We had the opportunity to rehearse some of these elements with last year's meeting, putting them into execution for the first time under a little bit of pressure. We're hoping that, it goes, we met with, we'll have Fiscal Communications again. They will be handling the kind of the logistics of the technology. And
Good.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott. I think, Mark, you're not off yet,
I
Scott.
believe last November we set a no earlier than date
Yes.
time. You're gonna do the same thing?
Yeah, I was just trying to reference that a little bit. So far, I haven't done that. Still working out some of the timetable of it. If if I do, I would say now, no earlier than 7 o'clock. But it could be, I don't like to do that because that implies a time, but just knowing that we have presentations and we want to have that microphone and the experience that everybody in the room has, understanding the way our meeting works, I would say that's fair. Be no registration after we call the vote if we use the vote card. So up until that time that we would call the vote, at that time that would stop the registration. People would be eligible to vote.
Okay.
Only one other comment I was going to make, around quorum, just had to do with, really putting the push on to get a sizable quorum.
Yes.
So that the reduction of the quorum is really a non-issue. I think that's important for us, particularly considering the magnitude of the decision that we're making and its strategic consequence. So I know people are doing it. There's a lot of postings. I thought the card was great. As soon as the card came in, I put my phone on it, and the QR code popped us right to the website. So Nick and whoever was responsible for that, that worked out, I think, really well. I don't know how else we can get that QR code, circulated, but maybe we post it everywhere, so as people are walking around with their phones, they can just say, there it is, and it takes us right to the town meeting. That's a handy way.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Second topic is the LDA in the development. Do you have any comments to?
I'm glad we're here.
Okay. Well, you didn't have to present. I just, maybe Nick, you can clarify the status, but I think what we've done is we have reached the final LDA, or at least the LDA that we're planning, we have distributed to the public. So it's available for anybody to read it. Bill Massaro, I've gotten some of your comments. Most of your comments were actually questions, or they were almost legal questions that were almost technical. They weren't major deal breakers on the fundamental agreement. They were specific things. I thought a number of them were good, and they probably go to the lawyers just to either the points that you brought out were really things that should be corrected. For instance, I've never had the courage to question how a lawyer uses a word like heretofore, but you did, and I was impressed because I don't even know what that word means, but you crossed off the B part of it.
It's easier when it's a typo from the previous version.
Okay. And I would lose to you in Scrabble because I would have spelled indemnities wrong, just like the people who wrote the LDA. But as I thought about it, I'm pretty sure you're right. It's a double ES at the end.
Yeah, because we're talking about like lessee, someone who's a lessee.
So my point is, I don't think we would ignore.
I did this for a living, reading these things.
Well, that's so you have the answer. You're a ringer. Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better that I know that particular word. My point though, Bill, is that the things that you brought up, many of them I thought were relevant or at least worth asking the question.
Yeah.
I didn't see any of them being things that are going to disrupt the agreement.
No, I didn't either. One of them I think is very informational, and the people will be very concerned about it, and that's the number of trips. It's it was before,
yeah,
and it will be again. So I don't know how we get that out so somebody sees it, but that's one of the vital pieces of information that people should realize is there, because you don't want to surprise them and say, this is what it is later on.
And
one more comment
before you go off of that one. But Todd, just a quick question. That one, it's a valid. They projected one thing, and maybe they projected it in too optimistic a way as far as the intersection of Hospital and Harding. In the process of actually moving forward with the permitting, though, all of that gets reviewed again. So if we're talking about mitigating the impact on a traffic intersection, for example, the projections would be updated in that permitting process, or are these the projections that would stay?
They have to do an ENF. They have to do an ENF, an
Right.
environmental or an EIR, an environmental impact report. There's a public commenting period. I checked to
Right.
make sure they at least recognized that there was a public commenting period. They did.
Right. So the reason my point is that even if the due diligence study came up with a conclusion using a certain set of assumptions, those things are going to be reviewed again, and
No.
if that has an impact, they'd be taken into account.
Yes, but my point, I guess, in even mentioning that particular item is because while it's not a financial impact to the town, it's a personal impact, or call it whatever you want, a convenience impact, a lifestyle impact, or whatever, to everybody that lives in the neighborhood or commutes through town and everything else. So I would hope that number, at least the right number, because it was missing some a couple of key pieces of information that I just got from Abby today.
Mhm.
That along with telling somebody what it's going to affect, whether it's going to affect a tax bill, or whether it's going to affect what the student costs are, or the whatever, you need to explain what the other impacts might be. And I would hope that it would get presented, whether whoever is going to be making the presentation about the impacts and benefits to the town, and at least they talk about that impact. I think that's a fair statement. The other comment I would make is, really didn't see the LDA until yesterday at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, and I would hope that you would at least give somebody or anybody who wishes to comment on it, at least another day. I mean, it's only been 26 hours or 27 hours before you vote on this thing.
Well, we may vote on it. I guess that's the real question. If we don't vote on it today, that says we go into the town meeting not having voted to approve the LDA, and yet we would still go into the town meeting recommending or not recommending approval of the articles.
You could always call another meeting for Thursday. You get the warrant committee having their final say on it on Thursday. I mean,
yeah, so which might be another meeting that they're going to want somebody from the Board of Selectmen at. So what I'm reluctant to do here, I don't see anything that's, I mean, to your point, if somebody in the next 24 hours or even the next 48 hours comes up with something that nobody has thought of yet, that is a complete
is that a challenge?
Disruptive. Not for you, Bill. No, what I'm getting at is, I think we have an LDA that we can be comfortable looking at as the final LDA, recognizing that if there was an objection that came up that like nobody's thought of yet, that we just look and go, how did we miss that fatal flaw? Then it would be more likely that we'd have a special meeting to undo the approval than to do so. I don't want to discourage comments from coming in, and I don't want to suggest that comments that come in will be ignored because it's too late, because you're right, they just became available to the public yesterday.
I don't disagree that the LDA is not in compared to what I thought it was, compared to what my concerns were back at the proposal stage, and what my concerns were when the PDA came in, by the way, with the same, released the day before you were going to discuss it, and you at least pushed it off a week. You don't have a week now. I mean, I recognize that, but
right.
There's a perception of delaying till the last minute to release something that I think some people might not be happy with. I can live with it. I don't, but I'm just pointing it out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. For sure, if there's comments, we want them. And Todd, I think it would be fair to say, like I said, if there was a fatal flaw that we all had missed.
The agreement gives you the ability to amend it.
Right. Well, yeah.
Consistent,
Right.
with the agreement and the proposal.
Right.
So I don't personally understand, I haven't had a chance to read fully Bill's comments, but traffic counts, like the relationship of concern about traffic counts, maybe in due diligence not being accounted for, how that relates to
Just as
the
an impact.
LDA.
Just it.
Bill, what you're saying is,
Impact, but I don't know how it would modify the agreement. The town meeting motion could provide and should provide the flexibility for the Board of Selectmen to make changes to the agreement as they deem to be in the best interest of the town.
normally, an agreement like this wouldn't even be on the table before this kind of a disposition vote would be taken. I think what we've tried to do is to be aggressive by saying, listen, we're gonna finalize as much as we possibly can before the town meeting, so you know what this is all about, you know what we're planning to do, you even know fundamentally the terms and conditions of the sale itself. Ordinarily, we never do it this way.
Right.
Yes,
We
but you
always
don't-
sit there and say, just authorize to do it, we're gonna dispose of the property.
Again, I don't disagree, but I will point out that you don't, when's the last time you did something of this magnitude?
Oh, yeah, well, no, you're right, and then which
So,
is,
so it calls for something in the way of
Absolutely.
out of the ordinary here.
right,
Absolutely.
which I think. we
Hopefully,
have-
you'll never have to do it again, by the way.
Well, we wouldn't do this again, probably. What I'm trying to get at, Bill, is that I think we would like to proceed with this so that this is, assuming that my fellow members of the board here are on board with the agreement, we would like to proceed with the agreement. We would like to proceed with the review of the articles so that we go into the town meeting with a clear position. If between now and a week from now, something were to come in that was so disruptive that we would say, wait a minute, this can't happen, I would expect us to reverse ourselves before the town meeting and make it clear. I'd rather do it that way than to run into the town meeting and say, well, we were gonna have the LDA, but we're still not, we haven't figured out the last.
I'm not
little
suggesting
thing."
that.
So, okay.
Right,
Okay.
right.
I'm not suggesting that.
So then the issue is simply one of, we're not sure that it's going to be very easy for us to pull off another meeting, for one thing, because to have another meeting, you need 72 hours. So that would mean not a Thursday meeting, a Friday meeting, or it would be the night, it would either be Monday or before the town meeting itself. So you see where I'm coming from?
As I've done all along, is point out alternate approaches,
Right.
point out concerns, and the
Okay.
decisions are ultimately yours.
Okay.
And
So if we make the decision to vote, for sure, no part of that should be taken by anybody as a suggestion that we're not interested in getting any feedback that people think is important.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further thoughts, Todd?
Vote to accept it
or-
in principle, too.
Mr. Chair, you had started to ask if you
I
wanted
just-
somebody
is
to
there any-
summarize that. Do you want me to run through and summarize the high points of LD? Or you good
There's
with
only, if there's anything that particularly you think is that would be of interest and of note to the public with this final iteration. I'm not looking for a run through.
that? Okay.
By paragraph of just, if anything that pops up to the list, here's the three things that we did to finally bring this thing in.
Sure.
Highlight those.
So I would say the key points are that Trinity is allowed to build 334 units of housing, no more than that, and they are limited to 34 3-bedrooms. The other key elements in terms of mitigation to the town is that Trinity will make a number of public infrastructure improvements, the roads, the water, the sewer, as well as improve 3 intersections in the area of the project, those being Harding and North Street, Harding and West Street, Harding and Hospital Road. And then they are also making a payment to the Medfield Public Schools through the town of $1 million to mitigate costs that the school department might experience with an increase in school-age children as a result of this project, as well as other projects going on around town. And that's all in addition to the $2 million purchase price, as well as a few other payments that are made in the LDA. So broad strokes, those are
You
the
might
big
mention-
pieces that pulled everything together.
And it gives us an opportunity to return,
So, yeah.
cover some costs.
You want to mention irrigation?
Sure. A couple other things is we definitely are not selling the entire hospital campus. We're selling approximately 45 acres. In addition to that, there are restrictions on Trinity about water and sewer usage. Right now, they're not proposing to irrigate the site with town water, but there's language in the land disposition agreement that would require prior approval from the Board of Water and Sewerage before they do that. Keeping an eye on our water permits and everything else. So that was a key comment that we had been hearing about water capacity. So that was one of the changes made in the land disposition agreement.
And if I could expand on that, they will also have to meet the Massachusetts water conservation standards, which is going to hold them to 65 gallons per person per day for residential use only, and it does not include irrigation or anything else. So when they submit their environmental impact reports and everything else, this will all be in there. DCAM was going to be held to that same standard for the 440 unit project. So
Okay. Any other comments from?
No, I had a chance to review it. I think we're good.
Okay. I heard an intake of air out there in the audience. No?
I'm not sure where it came from.
That was
We're talking about points. I think one of the things that's really emerged is the environmental remediation.
Sorry, you need the microphone, please.
No, Bill has the microphone.
I do.
I think that's
I guess if
really
we're
personal microphone.
there might be a Board of Health joke in there, but I'm not going to go there. If we're hitting high points, I think, one of the themes that's really emerged since Trinity began sharing its due diligence is the environmental remediation. So they studied 4 of the 27 buildings that they're acquiring, and they did walkthroughs of other similar buildings. And through extrapolation, they're currently estimating the cleanup of asbestos and lead at approximately $20 million. So I think when we met the other night at the public safety building, I think the more people understand that that's a cost that would stay with the town if this project doesn't go forward. And I think if people are familiar with the fire that just happened in Orange, where the town has a $4 million bill, I think that's something that, we should make sure that that people are aware of at special town meeting.
Anything else? We can, I think, move to the discussion of the 2 articles. There was a sheet here that has Article 2 summary. It was here, but I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to do something with it or.
Just for your background.
That was for our
Yep.
background. Okay, so.
We spent a lot of time talking about the first article. We hadn't spent a lot of time talking about the second. So
Okay.
just some background material for you.
So I will be quite happily corrected by anybody else in the room that won't like my summary here, but we have 2 articles. The first article, as Scott brought up, is the article that's the article that authorizes the disposition of the property that we're talking about to Trinity. And the one kind of weird little quirk on the end of that article is the fact that paired with it in the article is the authorization for the town to put in a sewer extension to basically enable Trinity to hook the sewer system they're putting into on the hospital campus, hook it up to our system. Previously, the state hospital had its own sewage system, so the state hospital historically has never been part of the town's overall sewage system.
That's not true.
That's not true.
No.
See, this is why I wanted to do this, because I wish to be corrected. So which one of you would like
Well,
to start?
I mean, it used to funnel down to a sewer pumping station that was on Route 27. And my assumption was that it got pumped up Route 27 to the
It did.
wastewater.
There was just before you get to Hospital Road, if you're coming down 27, there used to be a tiny little brick building on the right-hand side. That was basically the pumping station. That was dismantled after the hospital closure when we got into the cleanup and the comprehensive site analyses with decants. Somewhere around 2009, 2010, that was one of the first things after taking down the power plant that they did. But now don't hold me to the exact date, but somewhere between 1998 and the 2000 or whatever, they ran into several problems. They ran into problems with the well field. They ran into problems with their sewage and everything else, and they went on town water. And interestingly, in DCAM's proposal that got approved for the sale of the property that got approved in 2008, there was actually a provision in there that we would continue to supply, water and free sewage to the hospital property. So they were there. The old sewer beds were closed. They were closed down. They were, and Trinity had asked this question. They had been, in fact, surveyed by DCAM as part of the comprehensive site assessment and everything else, and they didn't find anything in the old sewer beds or anything else.
So
they were
when
hooked
you
up
talk
to our
about
system.
the old sewer beds were sewer beds that supported the state hospital.
Yeah, absolutely.
When we say that they were on part of the town's sewage system,
Before
does
we
that
built
mean?
the plant,
Before-
we built our plant.
No, but
Treatment plant.
but they were also on part of our main sewer system.
So if I'm a member of the public, my question is, so why does it make more sense to do a sewer extension than
Because
put
it's
in
all been decommissioned.
Thank you.
All of the sewer.
It would be more expensive to do it. It would be more expensive to restore the old system with the pumping station and everything else than what we're proposing.
Well,
to
it's
do.
it's even more complicated than that. It's part of the whole reason. It's even part of the whole reason why you have new infrastructure. Why new infrastructure is a major portion of Trinity's bid, because the state pretty much required that all of the old sewers be closed off. The sewer line that ran from the hospital property into Parcel B and then down to the pumping station, and then from the pumping station to the treatment plant, our treatment plant, was decommissioned as well and closed off. So it's not there.
Right.
Part of the plan for the master plan, the hospital master plan, was essentially to follow that same route and also have a grinding station and a pumping station and everything else. The current plan does not require that, and basically is hooking up off of Hospital Road and then down through, that way. So
Which is a more efficient way to get the job done.
and probably cheaper because you got 2 miles you'd have to run sewer line up to the treatment plant. If you had Route 27.
So the main point that I was trying to get at is in this article, there's this one little weird thing at the end that talks about a sewer line. I just want to make sure people understood why that sewer line was there.
Yes.
Because it's basically
It's a hookup.
it's the best way we could go about
Yes.
while allowing the site to connect into our town sewer system. And then the second article, that one, the first one requires 2/3, as Scott mentioned. Second article is the zoning change for that portion of the North Field that's associated with Building 13. It just happened to be that Building 13 extended into the zone that we had designated as the North Field. The Master Planning Committee had expected that Building 13 would be demolished, but in this case, Trinity is proposing to restore that or to use Building 13. Therefore, the zoning change that's being made to the North Field zoning is essentially to build in an exception to allow development of Building 13 plus the associated land that basically is, you would say, would be associated with Building 13 that's required for infrastructure, parking, and presumably some, the boundary is a little beyond the back wall of Building 13, so they can actually go out in the back, kind of where all that fencing is right now. The zoning for the North Field itself is not changing, except for that one little spot that's designated to support Building 13.
That's one of my questions.
I know, that's why I brought it up, because you asked, is anything changing on the North Field? The answer is no. The only thing that's changing is this one exception that's being built into the North Field in that one designated bump that allows for the reuse of Building 13. Does anybody have corrections to how I just described that?
Yes, that's correct. The only new language specifically says rehabilitation or renovation of Building 13 will now be allowed.
Right.
That's the only new language.
So the reason I brought it up is because you asked the question about the rest. It's like we're not doing anything. The rest is exactly what it is. It's not changing. Okay.
All right.
So we maybe start with well, first off, any discussion on Articles 1 or 2?
No, other than I know we've been working many hours on it. I think we've thought it through. I think it's been good discussions. I think a lot of the requests that we made, that Trinity was very open and receptive to things, especially when they heard the community was giving some pushback. They understood why. So, I mean, I think all in, and I've done contracts for many years in my corporate world. You always want to do a win-win, right? You don't want to feel like somebody got a stiff arm because I felt like they had you over the barrel. I genuinely believe this was a win-win, and it was treated that way throughout the negotiations.
It has been a long process to get to where we are, but I think that we've gotten to a good spot. So I think that I'm satisfied with the LDA.
And I'm on the development committee, and I've been an advocate for this. I think anybody that's paid any attention to what I've had to say knows that I'm in favor of it. So I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to recommend Articles 1 and 2 at the special town meeting.
No problem with us doing both. If
Uh.
we okay with
And
recommended
what,
approval?
for this purpose,
Yeah.
just the recommendation,
Yeah.
no problem.
Okay, second?
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we recommend approval for both Articles 1 and 2. Second item is a vote to approve, sign, and place the land disposition agreement in escrow pending the special town meeting vote. What that means is that we would sign this agreement. So in a sense, you have Mark, you're the one that can correct me on this one. We would sign this agreement, which says that basically the contract is actually in place. However, it is not issued until there is a positive approval of the land disposition that authorizes us to actually transfer the land. So administratively, we reach an agreement. We can go into the town meeting, tell everyone we're in agreement. We signed the agreement. It's not releasable until after the town meeting vote. Got that right?
So I will defer to what outside counsel is advising you. If this is how she's advised you to proceed, then fine.
Makes sense what you said.
I think it makes sense. So I have a fellow board member who thinks it makes sense.
I can read the language if you'd like it. In the event the project is not approved at town meeting, the LDA and the PDA shall become null and void, and to the extent the town retains any used, and then it goes on to protect us in terms of money.
And legally, that 2/3 vote is a legal requirement. If you didn't get that, that would supersede your action anyway.
Exactly.
Right.
So I need 2/3.
Okay,
May I ask you a question?
sure.
Is this like any other article subject to amendment? I'm
Not-
just curious.
How would you-
Probably not so far as the agreement itself goes. There may be other language in the.
Okay,
vote.
no, I just wanted to, I just wanted to get it out, so,
Yeah,
I mean, I would hate to see somebody stand up trying to do that if it's not something that's allowable or whatever,
I mean, yeah. I mean, this is our vote here.
No, I'm talking about at the town meeting.
You're talking about the disposition?
I think that's probably a question for the moderator.
As I say, that's for Scott to
Yeah.
answer, yeah.
Yeah. I would, yeah. We'll.
I didn't even see Scott back there, all right?
So tuned into the contact outreach for my phone problem.
So the question is, would like any other motion or any other article before town meeting, is it subject to amendments?
Sure. I mean,
But I don't, but the Article 1 is the vote to authorize the disposition of the property. So if somebody came in and said, well, I wanna change the
Right,
property,
see.
I don't think that would be allowable.
Yeah, amendment, a quick too fast and sure, so,
I think you need to know what the motion looks like and
yeah.
then take up any
Right.
motion to amend in that context.
Right.
as a policy, I mean, but I think you're exactly right, Mark, you'd have to know what the motion was, and did it change the context of.
And so someone will have to make that judgment up there, right?
Hypothetically, they could be narrowing the authority the Board of Selectmen has, or condition or something
Yeah,
like that. And I would think that type of thing would be something you would entertain. On the other hand, it could be way outside the scope of the article.
Yeah, I'm not trying to extend the meeting or anything else, or extend the discussions, but it's just, I just wanted to, if it happens, I just want to know what goes on.
So heads up, Scott. Okay. Motion?
A move to approve, sign, and place the land disposition agreement in escrow pending special town meeting vote.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that carries as well. So. All right. That takes care of that. Do we have that power purchase
Still
agreement?
no.
Still no.
Nope.
I
But we're
didn't see it
super
in it.
optimistic, so we keep hoping that
Okay, I was just
Time
as
is on our
happy I
side.
didn't have to read through that again this afternoon, so that's deferred. Okay, the next item is vote to approve fiscal year 2022 appropriation transfers and increases to fiscal year 2022 revolving fund expenditure limits.
So let's do the appropriation transfers first. You have one under the tree department, you have one under the sewer department and the cemetery. Just a refresher course in appropriation transfers, the Municipal Modernization Act, which passed in 2017, allows you in the months of May, June, and the first part of July to make a transfer within salaries and operations within a single department. Usually in the past, prior to 2017, these would be reserve fund transfer requests at the end of the year, and that even when there was existing money within that budget. So it offers a little more flexibility for us to do that.
And I see that the signature block was corrected. I have a hot button issue here on the drafts that you saw. We are still legally a Board of Selectmen, so when we have official documents, when we have official
That is
records, we should refer to ourselves as the Board of Selectmen until
Yeah.
we are no longer. So the original draft had switched over to Select Board. People can call us what they want, but in official
Until that vote
records,
takes place,
official
correct.
records, we should be And they do.
I get all sorts of
Yes.
things, select persons, select.
Yeah, yes. People can call us what they want, and they do.
We seem to respond.
Yes, we're good at responding, but for official records, I think we should maintain our official legal name.
Correct.
100 years from now, Richard DeSorga Jr. will be researching things and go, but I didn't think they approved that until, and we don't want to get them all.
Did you
fouled
say
up.
Richard or Bill?
Richard
just for
DeSorga-
clarification?
No, I said Richard DeSorga.
Or historian. Now, where did you pick that up though? Because I see.
In the ones that were in the packet originally.
Oh, okay.
So I looked at that.
Got
We
it.
put things in there just to make sure you're reading
I know.
it. That's all.
I know, and you know I do. Okay, so we do them one at a time?
I think
Or
you can do
we
all
can do
three
all
together.
three.
It's fine. Yes.
So it's a transfer of $8,500 from tree salary expense to tree operating expense, contract service tree. A transfer of $70,000 from sewer department salary expense salaries to sewer department operating expense contract services. And $10,000 from cemetery salary expense salaries to cemetery operating expenses contract services cemetery. Motion.
I would move to make the, so moved. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And the second part of that is we are asking for an increase to the fiscal year 22 revolving fund expenditure limit for ALS. As you know, town meeting sets the expenditure limit, which we had at $400,000. And then there's the ability to increase that with approval from the Board of Selectmen and the Warrant Committee. And we are asking for an increase to $425,000 total.
So adding
So,
25,000.
so adding a
to it.
$25,000 increase to that expenditure.
So this is a fourth, like that?
Yes, this is a separate one. There's no form for it. It's
No
just
form.
a vote.
Okay. So I'll call that 5B, and it's approved increase to ALS revolving fund.
Yep, the expenditure limit increased from 400 to 425.
Revolving fund to $425,000.
Expenditure limit.
Increase to ALS revolving fund expenditure limit to $425,000.
Correct.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 3-0.
Thank you. Okay, and then we're going to hold number 6.
Hold number 6. Any citizen comment?
No one registered?
All commented out.
I don't see any questions.
And then the consent agenda, we have 2 items. Medfield High School class of 1970 requests a 1-day beer wine license for their 50th reunion celebration, which is delayed 2 times by COVID, at the First Parish Church on September 23rd from 8 to 11 p.m. And the other second item, Zulo Gallery is requesting a 1-day beer wine license for June 16th from 5 to 11 p.m. for a Thursday on the deck, to coincide with the last weekend of the Upbeat Spirit, the Art of Jason Berger, American 1924 to 2010 exhibit that ends on June 19th. A motion to,
So moved.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda is approved, 3-0. Unanimously, I guess. Meeting minutes. This is my next place of complications. Let me just see here.
So-
So we had 3 meeting minutes.
Yep.
I have to find which one of these I had them on. It was not that one, it was this one. Yes. So first, I was good with March 1st and April 19th, but I had significant edits, so I want to go through those. I was not good with April 26th
Okay.
at this point. So,
Okay.
but we need to discuss it. So, did any of you have any comments on March 1st?
March 1st, I didn't, because I wasn't
You
a
did,
selectman
right.
yet,
So
so I
that's
did
right.
not do that one.
So
I
Pete-
did,
yeah.
for me, 19, at first I didn't see that it said that the selectman had a dialogue or whatever, so, because there was some questions go back and forth.
Yep.
But once I realized that she put that in, I was like, oh, okay. Well, so I just caught, I think at the end of that, they had Marcucci approved.
Yep.
And he was home watching on TV.
Okay.
So not that much. And then on the 26th, I did get in and edit some and gave Brittany a heads up
Yeah.
because there was a lot of discussion
Right.
that particular meeting that I thought it was of value to bring up. When one question came up about the SOI, it led to a rather long and lengthy discussion. I didn't think it should get brushed off.
So you weren't comfortable yet with April 26th?
No, I made my edits and sent them into Brittany.
Okay. Let's do them one at a time. Pete, March 1st.
Is that the intersection one?
That is the intersection one.
I didn't get to reviewing that one yet. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay, then,
Because I know there were some changes that had,
actually, the changes went in a good direction in my mind. So a lot of what I was concerned about. So Pete, I think you'll see the comments that I've made to the Google Doc.
okay,
if I-
all right. The other two I did look at.
You didn't look at the other two?
I did. I
You
did.
did?
I did, and I made some edits to both of them.
All right, give me 1 second, just to highlight what I did on the hard thing.
And I don't usually work in Google Docs, but I just closed them, and I'm assuming that my edits stay there.
They do.
so.
So I was good with March 1st, except that we'll defer it, but in the discussion of the West Mill at Adams Street, I thought there should be a comment made about the incorrect railroad crossing sign. It's just as part of that discussion. To me, one of the big points that Mitch made was that the crossing signs are actually graphically incorrect. So that was worth calling out for me. It's on Google Docs.
Are you talking about the one on Dale Street?
No, I'm talking about if you come down Adams Street to
Yeah.
West Mill,
Yeah.
there's a railroad crossing sign that is graphically showing the train
Right,
tracks.
right.
that are
Yeah,
on-
that's the one I'm talking about. It's still there.
Well, yeah, I know. So my only point was I thought in the meeting minutes, that one particular point that Mitch made is significant enough that it should have been included. That's all.
Okay.
So I was okay with March 1st. I just had significant edits. That's all.
Okay.
It's not an issue of not. And I moved Hilly Passis's comments from where they were farther down in the intersection sequence. I moved it up to the Harding West. Her comment. I'm sorry, Harding North. Her comments had to do with the discussion of a potential circle at Harding North. So I didn't do anything to her comments. I just put them in a different spot.
She commented on Harding at West as well.
If she did, I didn't move those if they were reflected. The part that I moved was
Okay.
the thing that she put that shows up below South Street at Spring Street. The first paragraph below the bullets is Hilly's comments
Yeah,
about the
all
Harding
right.
North Street intersection. I just moved it up where it kind of landed.
Yeah, I just remember she said that she wouldn't drive Harding if we didn't change it.
Right. Probably I won't either. And that was, everything else is kind of editorial, minor editorial. So it was just those, so you know what I did. Now you know what I did. So when you're ready on March 1st, I'm ready on March 1st.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
On April 19th, you looked at that one, Pete? And you were good with that one?
April 8,
April
19 and April 26th, I looked at both those and made edits.
Yeah, so at April 19th, I had one, again, I'm good with it. I had one specific comment, and it had to do with open space maintenance. And what it did, Pete, is it quoted you. We had the discussion about open space, and this was the open space and recreation plan. I made a comment about open space maintenance not having been addressed in the townwide master plan. The minutes state that you had said that it wasn't it was not appropriate for the townwide master plan to have set forth a maintenance plan. I do believe that's what you said. But if that's going into the minutes, I want that I said the exact opposite, that was specifically part of the charter that we had asked for. So I think that is true. That's a correct reflection of what you said, but the minutes do not reflect. I absolutely disagree with that. So I would like those minutes to disagree with that.
All right.
So it's not a question of what you said was wrong. It's just you and I have diametrically opposed opinions there. So I'm going to put them in the minutes, put them both in there. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So with that correction, I'm prepared to at least approve that one. If you would like to, we can approve April 19th.
Sure, so moved.
As amended. Okay.
Yeah.
And yes, you can.
Yeah, that one I got in, made some minor edits.
Motion, and did you have more too? That's right. I'm
No, just,
losing sight of the dates for you.
no, that's okay, no, I just made some minor edits, nothing.
Okay. So motion to approve April 19th as amended?
Yes.
Yes.
Second, yes. All those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Aye, aye. All right. Passed. That one's okay. And then April 26th. So we corrected we corrected the transfers, but my general comment about using select board.
Yes, I saw that in there.
Started changing
Quite
it,
a few,
and
yes.
then I just said, you know what, I'm gonna make a broad statement that we are not yet a select board, so our official minutes should reflect the board select.
And Dale, the recording clerk, emailed me after she had done the May ones and said, I think I messed up and started calling them a select board. And I said,
Self-correcting errors are,
Yes.
I really like that. So if we get that corrected.
We will fix that.
That's good. And I think, let me see if I had anything. We're not ready to pass this one, but I just want to, if there's anything else that's in here. Oh, yeah, there was, let's see, what page am I on? Page 2. Where is it? There's a reference to a pre-document amendment in one of these bullets. I gotta find it. Where the heck is it? And it's, I don't know what it really was supposed to say. But I gotta find it here now. I just had no idea what it was. Maybe on page 3, hold on. Yeah, oh yeah, it's on page 3 at the top, right after the first bullet. The first sentence says, Mr. Murphy recommended dismissal of Article 14 with the this is the bylaw revision for the school building committee, with the understanding that there will be a pre-document amendment that will address concerns raised by some Board of Selectmen members. I know I didn't say that, but I don't know what I said.
We'll go back and take a look.
I thought what I said was that if the revised bylaw did not pass, we would still take into account the comments that people have had in forming a building committee under the existing bylaw. I think that was the point I made, but the term didn't mean anything to me, and I wasn't sure. That, I think, is the point I was trying to make.
We'll go back and take a look.
Okay. And I believe that's that. Everything else, I think, is strictly. I think that is everything. Yeah, that's everything significant I had on that one. So that's it. Okay. 1 out of 3. That's better than we sometimes do with the minutes.
Yeah, so I'm good with this one because I did get in and again,
Yep.
since I sense we're not putting our active dialogue, that's what the YouTube's
Right,
for, if people want to
right,
go back.
right.
I just on page 5 kind of called out that I asked about the 2022 SOI document differing much from the
Yep.
one submitted 5 years ago.
Yep.
This led to a dialogue about the intent of the SOI and various answers included in it. That's what we went back and forth with.
Yep.
And then later in it on page 6, when we didn't quickly just go into vote on the electric vehicle charge site host agreement, I actually asked the background because I didn't understand it. And again, that led to a good dialogue between Nick and others.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I picked up on the Medfield food cupboard versus Medfield community cupboard.
Oh.
And I happened only because I was watching the YouTube as I was on that part, and I was like, "Oh, Pete corrected it. I got to make sure we get that called out in the notes."
Right.
And what was the other thing I had in here? Oh yeah, and then in the motion to actually approve minutes, they had me down as approving March 15th and March 22nd, which I would not do because I wasn't part of it yet. So the vote actually was 2-0, not 3-0.
Right.
That's all I did.
Good. All right, we're done with minutes. Town administrator updates.
I have a few for you this evening. Just a couple of reminders. Trinity is going to be holding office hours up at Medfield State Hospital at 9 o'clock on Saturday for anybody that would like to come by and talk to them.
In a breakfast truck. Let's be very clear. There's a breakfast truck there.
Well, I was away for a few days. So I wasn't sure that was confirmed, but
Yes.
that is great news because I'm planning on being there. So
Abby
perfect.
and Milo will be there.
Again, the special town meeting is June 21st at 6. We've covered that a couple of times. Just want to remind everybody that all the municipal offices will be closed on Monday in observance of Juneteenth, sorry. And then the stone dust has been installed on the rail trail, I was told this evening. We haven't seen it in person yet, but we're hoping to get up there for a field trip soon. Great.
I thought it paved it at first. Yeah, concrete.
And the last one, we've had a couple of questions asking what your summer schedule will be for meetings, and we're working on that now, and we'll have some proposed dates out to you for the summer. And that's it this evening.
So I saw July 5th. So July 5th, is that a confirmed one or is that
It's
still
not
on?
confirmed. We were just holding it as a placeholder, and then we'll decide on that.
Were people asking because they thought we were working too little or too much?
Moving on. Yeah. I was checking Bill's vacation schedule, and I haven't heard from him yet.
I'm trying to plan my vacation, and I need to know when the board of selectmen are going to be meeting.
I've only goofed that up once for Bill.
That's true. Okay. Let's see. Nothing else?
Nothing else to see.
Okay. Selectmen reports.
All right. So went to the Trinity presentation last week. That I thought went really well. It was well attended both in person, and I had my Zoom up so I could see a lot of folks that attended online. Good dialogue. I thought it was a very positive conversation. And Abby and her team, Amanda, did a nice job. I went on Saturday to the Eagle Scout ceremony. Pete and I were both there. Paul Narkowicz, phenomenal ceremony. It's my first one. I was kidding them like it was a rookie doing it. We did pass along your congratulations. But just what a top-notch young man. Super happy he signed on to Ithaca to get into part of their music program, double major. So that was great. And then went to the CAM event up at the State Hospital Saturday morning. That panel was very interesting. I sensed, though, because of everything that was going on this past weekend, I don't know if it was as well attended as it has been over the past few weeks. So this coming Saturday, knowing that the food truck will be up there, and that they talked about, Abby was very adamant that she and Milo will be there. So I'm pretty certain that Sarah and Leo and Eileen and Rooney will all be up there.
I'm going to leave Bucky at home.
Free breakfast sandwich. Shame on those that don't show up.
Monty will stay home. I could bring Monty. Bucky has to stay home.
And then I do hope that our fine town administrator had a nice birthday weekend. Hopefully
you
got
very
some
much.
quality RR,
Yes, thank you.
right? Made it back safe and sound. That's excellent. And I think that is it. I think that's what kept me busy last week.
Very good. Okay.
So it was a great pleasure to discover that our Eagle Scout ceremony was the young man who sang at Memorial Day so eloquently for the town. Seems like a really nice young man. In the last couple of 3 weeks, I've met with both the Democratic candidates running for the state rep seat that Sean Dooley has. Both seem very, very interesting and qualified. Went to the wake for Rachel Brown, and last night we had a Medfield Foundation meeting.
Very good. In my case, I also was at the information meeting on Thursday, which I agree, it was a great meeting. Not only was the conversation really good, that we pretty much had the safety building training room packed, which was nice to see that the kind of interest in that. I think I said this at the meeting, but when we were first talking about this project, I think it was when the master planning committee was still putting its concept together. One of the points that came up was that, it would be really good if we could have a public-private partnership. And I think a lot of times when towns say they want a public-private partnership, what that means is we need to find somebody who has the money to pay for the stuff that we want done that's willing to do it. And I don't think we're likely to ever find that kind of a public-private partnership, but I do think based on this early stage in this overall process that we have found a developer that has worked hard to both understand what we want, to be responsive to what we want. Nick, you could probably either confirm or refute this, but recognizing that these kinds of negotiations there's a lot at stake. They're complex, they're big. They involve a developer taking on risks. My sense is that this is what I've seen in the negotiations, that maybe they're just the sustained professionalism, the open willingness to both be assertive about what people care about, but also being willing to try to accommodate the other side. I've been encouraged by that. So if we do in fact move ahead with this, I feel like this is a developer that has the commitment to building the kind of relationship that's going to make a big difference in the success of the project, but also make a big difference in kind of how we experience it as we go through the process.
Totally agree.
And then I spent the better part of the rest of the week out in Chicago attending one of my son's grad school graduation. So that was a lot of fun. Ate some good meals. It was nice. One of my other sons came as well, so that was sort of a good thing. And we managed to make it back in here by about 2:45 this afternoon, so I could get ready for this meeting. So all in all, great couple of days, but can't say I went to a whole lot of Medfield meetings other than the one on Thursday. Okay, that should do it. Unless there's anything else we got to talk about.
That's all I have this evening.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Take care, everyone.
All right, thank you.